Do you keep track of how many single-use plastics you use?
I don't keep track like number-wise, but it is very evident in the recycling bin. So that's something I'm conscious about, and I try to make sure it's all recycled. But it's so hard today because it's everywhere. It's like with every packaging, almost everywhere.
I personally do. I do try to minimize as much as I can. But for like the more unavoidable plastics, I do try to recycle as much as I can, or buy maybe like reusable containers or use reusable bags, so I don't try to create as much plastic garbage as I can. So personally, I do, but sometimes it's just unavoidable. Yeah.
Well, I've had occasion to, travel on the seas in different parts of the world, and to see the amount of plastic and other pollution in the seas is really quite distressing. And then you see what happens to the animals and fish that live in the sea. It's their home. I find it very highly irresponsible of human beings to do that.
Definitely try and buy glass instead of plastic for long-term use, but I will say I'm bad with takeout coffee cup. That's that's sort of my downfall for sure. But yeah, I agree. Too much single use for sure. And I do try and monitor it. Yeah. So.
Like, I definitely try and keep track, but it can be difficult just because we're surrounded by single-use plastics. So I would say, like, I try and keep it to a minimum, but just like given the nature of my day-to-day life, it can be difficult. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. I try to be mindful of like how much plastic I'm using like every day, but it's everywhere, and everywhere you go there's always single-use plastic somewhere, so it's really hard to avoid it. But I do try to keep it like on my radar when I'm like going out during the day. So yeah.
I don't keep an exact number, but I try to use as many disposable plastics as I can. I use reusable containers whenever I can, and I generally try to recycle anything that I can that's recyclable.
I do not keep track of how many single-use plastics I use. We do try to get away from them, and even in our businesses, we aim to only use compostable material and get away from fossil fuels and stuff like that. But it certainly is food for thought to think about keeping track of that sort of thing and actually having an idea of what I actually use, because I don't know if I could tell you in a day.
I try to limit my use of single-use plastics. I've got a reusable coffee cup that I bring around with me, same with utensils. I try not to use straws. So yeah, trying my best.
I personally don't. I don't really use plastic water bottles or things of that nature. I usually have a shaker cup with me that I just fill up, but it's not something that I've personally given a lot of attention, I would say.
I'm gonna be really honest here, not really.
Why not?
Why not? It's just that I feel like sometimes I just forget usually.
Oh, I always try to buy glass, but I know it's not necessarily affordable for every person, or that it's accessible in all places. But where possible, I prefer glass or something reusable.
I try to keep things organized and like understanding and looking at the labels of stuff and like having different bins for myself. But other than that, it is kind of, there's multiple different plastics that can't be recycled, and so like keeping track of it is a lot. So I can understand why that could be a struggle for a lot of people.
No, I don't. Why not? I don't know. I have too many things to keep account of in a day. It's not something that I tend to focus on, really. They're convenient. You don't really think much about it. It's kind of my own flaw.
Yes, I use none. None.
How do you do that?
Well, I have I have my own bags I use all the time. If I use a plastic bag at a grocery store, it goes in my plastic bag receptacle that I then reuse and reuse and reuse until it's worn out or has holes in it. So I was given this, but this has it's a Ziploc, so this bag will get used again and again and again. Okay? So I just don't buy plastic. I refuse to.
I don't. I do recycle as much as possible, and I try to lessen the amount that I use. I use, metal straws when I can, and in my house, of course. I use reusable wax wrappings instead of plastic wrap when I can. But I do not keep track. I do it when it's possible to do that.
I wouldn't say keep track of it, no. I try and be mindful because I know it is bad for the environment, and I try and reuse and have better alternatives when I can, but I never track it, no.